Welcome back to CryptosRUs. I am George. As Bitcoin approaches $30,000, one can't help but wonder where it'll end up being at the end of 2021. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, or maybe as high as $500,000 by the end of 2021. Now, recently, Guggenheim CIO Scott Miner came out and said Bitcoin is worth $400,000, and he based it on scarcity and compared it to gold. But I have found someone else that believes that Bitcoin is actually worth more than that. That Bitcoin is actually worth $500,000, and I'm talking about CEO of ARK Invest, Cathie Wood. She actually did an interview about a month ago. People weren't really paying attention, and this is a good listen. So in this video, I want to show you this clip, also react to it, and give you my final thoughts. All right, let's get started. Let's see what Cathie Wood has to say about Bitcoin.
What I'd like to talk about is Bitcoin. Bitcoin has had a magnificent run this year. It got down below 4,000 in March during the coronavirus crisis. And we know very well, went through a lot of growing pains in that time, and I think is better for it. And I mean the entire ecosystem, including the exchanges that at one time allowed 100 times leverage. I don't know if that's still going on, but those who were 100 times levered in March, they no longer have their businesses. So I think governance is becoming better in this space, which is...
All right, let's stop right there. Obviously, yes, Bitcoin did have a tremendous fall, falling to 3,800 in March when everything was falling, right? And yeah, Bitcoin came out stronger afterwards. Bitcoin, the whole community. Now, what she's talking about, the exchanges with 100x leverage, unfortunately, they still exist. But she's trying to say that, yeah, people that took advantage of that 100x leverage, they probably became bankrupted or liquidated, right? Now, when she was talking about governance, I think she didn't know what to say. As for governance, it's an open market. Yeah, people get liquidated. I guess those bad actors just go away. I guess that's what she's saying. But in the blockchain world, we usually think about governance as how you vote on, decisions that's going to be made for a blockchain. So her definition, governance, and traditionally what crypto people think of governance is a little bit different, but I think we get what she's saying.
All to the good. We have written 2 white papers, specifically Yassine Almandra, our crypto analyst, has, and one of them examines whether institutions are ready for Bitcoin, and also asks the other question, is Bitcoin ready for institutions? And we think one of the reasons that Bitcoin is appreciating is institutions are dipping their toes in. Now, they're doing this not just from an investment point of view, but from a corporate cash point of view. Some of you may know that MicroStrategy has converted all of its cash, the cash on its balance sheet, into Bitcoin. Square has done that with, I believe, it's 5% of its 1% of its assets, 2% of its cash. And I believe we're going to see other companies doing that as well.
Just so you know, this interview was done in November. So this is before MicroStrategy raised $650 million worth of debt and bought more Bitcoin, right? So I wonder what Cathie would think about that. So this was before then, but obviously MicroStrategy already made their decision to purchase $425 million at that time of Bitcoin. Also, Square purchased $50 million worth of Bitcoin, but that's what she's referring to.
Well, we know that PayPal also announced, so it is following Square and Robinhood and allowing the purchase and sale of Bitcoin. PayPal is, a much more conservative, more old world company than either Square or Robinhood. So again, some validation there, seal of approval of sorts.
Yeah, real quick, that ex-CEO of PayPal came out not too long ago on CNBC and claimed that Bitcoin was a Ponzi and it's a fraud and that it's go to zero. So when she says PayPal is a pretty conservative company, I think that's true. But that could also be the reason why that person, I forgot his name, is the ex-CEO, not the current CEO. But I think she's right. PayPal is a lot more conservative than, say, Square, which is a much newer company, and same thing, Robinhood.
The paper that Yassine wrote describes what would happen if institutions decide that a 5% allocation to Bitcoin is appropriate. And the reason, and really that number is closer to the 6% range, the way we wrote the paper. But the reason 5% is important to me is I saw real estate entering pension funds in the 70s, and they started with 1%, migrated to 5%. We saw emerging markets, many pension funds and institutional investors moving into emerging markets as MSCI developed that classification and moved from 1% to 5% and wherever they are now. And we think the same thing is going to happen with Bitcoin.
So I think that's the most important thing that I haven't heard anyone else talk about. How pension funds and institutional investors early on in the 70s and 80s started buying real estate and also buying emerging markets. So I think, back then I was not born yet, but it seems like that was a relatively new thing back in the 70s and 80s. Pension funds and institutional investors, they would put very little amount and then they would scale it up to 5%. And they're making a comparison how that is exactly what's going on now with institutional investors, dipping their toes into Bitcoin and scaling that up to 5%.
And other cryptocurrencies. And if it does, and if it's, say, just with Bitcoin, and we've got that 5% allocation, somewhere in the 4 to 6% range, that if that were to happen and all institutions were going to do it, of course that's not going to happen, but some might add more, so offsetting those who don't participate at all, that would add somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 to the Bitcoin price. We're at 20,000 right now. Now that is not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen for years. But if we're on our way, it is going to be a very pleasant journey.
I do agree with her. I think we're going to have a pleasant journey. I think this journey just started. As more and more institutions FOMO in, they're all looking at the playbook of MicroStrategy, Square, now MassMutual, Jefferies, Guggenheim, right? Everyone is jumping in. So can Bitcoin go up to $500,000 someday? End of 2021? End of 2022? Or maybe in a few more years? The answer is yes. Yes, it can. So there you have it. Catherine Wood and ARK Invest is very bullish on Bitcoin. In fact, they bought Bitcoin very early on, and Bitcoin actually sits in one of their funds. So yes, she's very bullish on Bitcoin, and her reasoning is very similar to Michael Saylor's. Guggenheim was different. They were basically looking at scarcity versus gold, more like the stock to flow model. But Catherine is looking at it from adoption, institutional adoption, right? As more and more converts their cash flow, right, into Bitcoin, that is going to drive Bitcoin up in a big way. And what's interesting is, she said, is Bitcoin ready for institutional investors? That's an interesting way to look at it, right? Because most people think about the opposite. Is institutional investors ready for Bitcoin? But no, is Bitcoin ready for institutional investors? And we are seeing effect. That is why Bitcoin is going up so much and why it's nearing $30,000, and that's only the beginning. So, what do you guys think about Catherine Wood's take? Why Bitcoin will go up to $500,000 possibly someday? Do you agree with that or don't you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for my next video. And while you're waiting, check out these two others.